Good morning. Good morning, viewers. Very warm welcome to SpiceFM's anchor show all about business. It's called Show Business. And I'm your weekly host, Ammar and Jalf will be joining me when he gets here off either his jet, skis, or his private jet, or whatever it is that he's coming in this morning. And I'm hoping that he's not going to be too late. But in any event, I'm here, and each week we bring you some news, views, and one or two clues from the business world and Asian business connections, or AB connections, as we are now formally known, connects, supports, and promotes the minority and wider communities. And whether you are an existing business, want to start a business, or just want to talk business, we can help. Gosh, what a crazy week from a business and trade perspective. But in fact, the impact of that on us all is quite profound, as it happens. So for those of you who may not have been following the news, President Donald Trump decided to activate some trade tariffs and pretty much start taxing countries at country level on their goods being supplied into America. And that just turned the world upside down, is what it did, and led to trillions of pounds being wiped off various stocks and shares, and he's paused the introduction of the tariffs because, quite frankly, it would appear that the US economy was rapidly going to tank, and the single biggest usual secure mechanism of funding and finance is bonds. This is where people buy into the government's treasury and expect a return. And the bonds that tend to be the safest and securest started to get impacted. And if you be unaware of, if you want some context around that, it's a similar type of thing that happened when our own government and the newly appointed Prime Minister introduced some policies here, which then immediately led to our bonds being sold out. Hey, Jack.
Good morning, Ammar.
You got a filter on your phone?
Filter? No, I think it's just the sun, Ammar.
No, you look more beautiful every time I see you.
No, I think it's sun. I think it's just shining in the right kind of positions, I guess.
So good morning, Jeff. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good morning. Just running a bit late all morning. So see the dedication of doing shows in cars and stuff.
Yeah. I thought you were in a private jet. I didn't know if it was your speedboat or your private jet. It looks as if it could be either one of those things, but it's a jet car. Yeah, anyway, we're here. Jeff, I was talking about how President Donald J. Trump
Donald Duck.
Well, you can't say that, but
is that politically incorrect?
Well, no, there's a cartoon called Donald Duck, if that's what you're referring to. You're very welcome to say any name you want. Uh, but I wasn't referring to the cartoon. I was actually referring to the president of the United States of America. Um, yeah, Jeff, what do you know?
Um, Obviously, he's been oohing and ahhing. He started all of these tariffs, and then he had to eat a bit of humble pie because he tariffed almost every single country or 90 countries in the world, and then he had to then um, stop them because of the way that it shook up the market. And then he's put a stall on all of them for 90 days, apart from China, and he's hit China with a I don't know 100 and it's weird, isn't it? It's like 114% tariff. Not 100 and I know that 1% makes a difference, but I'm just wondering how they calculated that. And then I think China's just retaliated with a 125% tariff on all American goods. Obviously, the two big economic powers, superpowers, are going head to head on this tariff stuff, shaking the world market. I guess the only thing that seems to be stable and going up is the price of gold, and everything else is probably in turmoil.
It is. I mean, gold's hit the newest heights. So anyone who's got any gold is in a great position. Only so the thing with the because I that like look at these things, but only if the rest of the currencies remain. Like the value of anything is only if someone's got the money to pay for it, right?
Mm,
And if you take that away,
yeah.
then what's the value of some shiny bit of
Um,
mineral?
I think
Anyway, I'm being incredibly dramatic, right? But if my point being is if you don't have anything to hedge against, if you don't have anything
um,
to peg something against,
well,
what 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 do you peg it against?
if you go back to how it used to be, it would be trading and bartering and putting a value on A to B against A and B. I think Amal, this is potentially leading to. I mean,
The end of days.
what is no, it's not end of the. I'm saying economic wise, I think they want to create a different economic system, and I think that the turmoil is created so that in 1973, I think it was the Bretton Woods Agreement. Prior
The
to
exchange
1973,
ex,
yeah,
the exchange mechanism.
well, that was only 50 years ago, right? So basically, prior to that, every single person, when he had funds in the bank, it was all locked in against the value of gold. So actually, your money had to be, the bank would have to say, yes, you've got £10,000 in your account. We're locking it in against £10,000 worth of gold. So they would have to have the gold in the bank to then value your money because you had something solid that was valued against it. Bretton Woods Agreement effectively took that away. So the banks could then pretend that you've got £1 million in the bank, but they don't have the gold to back it up. So if you actually went into the bank to pull your £1 million out, they're not going to be able to give it to you. And they rely the function of the bank relies on that everyone doesn't go to get the money at the same time, as it used to be back in the day. So since they've changed that, the banks were able to borrow money willy nilly in many ways, and that's why you have hard currencies and soft currencies, and America dictated who the hard currency nations were and A, B, C, and D. So I think it was an economic system that just favored the ones that were kind of in control and A, B, C, and D. But the value of gold, so it's not basically it's not real money that's out there floating around. It's a lot of digits and A, B, C, and D. So I think that system, I think the powers that be, they're looking to bring in a brand new system for the world economy. And obviously, there has to be turmoil before they can bring in this new system. I don't know what that new system is, but I would have thought it's going to be something that's very much digital, without any kind of monies out there. What is the exchange rate? Is the dollar going to be the go-to kind of exchange where oil and everything's the petrodollar and ABCD. Are the BRICS economies looking to change that because they are trading without the dollar, and that's will really devalue the dollar. So there's lots of stuff going on behind the scenes. I'm not an economist, but I think something obviously really big is happening, and I think maybe something very big and change something that's going to change how we see the economies of the world is probably in the process of happening at this moment in time. We just don't know what it's going to look like, but some people do.
Oh, no, without a doubt, and it's an incredibly turbulent time. So, from a where are we here right now? As of right now, China's raised tariffs on US goods to 125%. So, the things that we need to consider is China and the US keep doing this, and it'll just get to the point where it's already impacted. People have had so much wiped off the pension pots, John.
Mm.
Right? So anyone with a pension has seen hundreds of thousands, depending on how much they've got in the pension.
Mm.
So then calls into question further challenges and issues associated with the current approach of how you do things. Now, if you'd put your pension money into buying gold, 10, 20 years ago, it would have been a steady state, a secure physical element. And arguably, maybe that's the type of thing that people now need to start considering. Because if you're using stocks and shares, and I appreciate it's only the last couple of weeks we've seen this level of turmoil, and there's been a number of corrections and things like that. But in any event, the impact on this is profound. But here's the big thing for me, right? The short-sightedness of the US right here, right now, is between Japan and China. So Japan has $1.1 trillion of US bonds. It has lent America $1.1 trillion.
Right.
China has lent, as of December 2024, 749 billion, so nearly 1 trillion, three-quarters of a trillion. Right? And the reason why the president or the US had to reverse some of their reserve, sort of pause some of their activities was because China and Japan started dumping their bonds. And the bonds in a country, the debt that it has, right, what it does is it lends money and it gives a return over that period of time. And it's really secure. So usually because a country is not going to go bankrupt, right? So normally it's the securest thing to do. In this circumstance, not dissimilar to what happened with Liz Truss. And remember when she came in as Prime Minister and done a budget and it wiped off billions of pounds of our markets and our sovereign debt. I mean, the UK and the US are considered to be the best debt, the best debt bond holders. Now, China owns, between them at one point, China and Japan owned 44% of America's debt.
So I'm still not. So obviously, if you look at it as a normal debt, because I've never understood that clearly. So they've got, so the Chinese have effectively, the Americans have brought Chinese goods, and they've said to them, look, we'll take it off you now, we'll pay you tomorrow. Something on those lines. Is that correct?
No. There's two different things here, right? So investors, so just think about an investor, right? I've got £100 and I put it somewhere, wherever it is. Yeah. I'll give it to Jaff. I'll give Jaff £100. and Jaff agrees to pay me 5%, right? Interest. So every single year, I'll get 5% interest. But if Jaff goes, and Jaff then uses that £100 to either lend it to other people or use it for your business or whatever it is, but every single year, I expect to get my 5%. And but at the end of a 5-year period or a 10-year period, I expect to get my money back as well.
Okay.
So America, so what and how that operates, rather than it being a Jaff, right? Governments issue bonds. A bond is my guarantee that give me some money. So government, give me some money, and I'm going to give you a bond, and you're going to then get your money back plus interest. And the reason why an investor might choose to do that, as opposed to putting it in a stock market or because of the volatility. So normally bonds are secure. But the value of bonds, because it's a traded economy, a commodity. So it's like the value of foreign exchange. It's the value of a pound. It's a value of gold. It's a value of whatever. It's a commodity, right? So it's a commodity that somebody invests in. And China sat there with trillions of pounds, and it goes, I don't need it in my bank. Right? I don't need it in my bank. And actually, I mean, it's from China's perspective, Japan's perspective, it's strategy is what it is. I'll lend it to America, I'll buy bonds. So it's not like an official loan agreement because you're buying a bond, but because the bond is issued by the US Treasury or the UK Bank of England or the Treasury here, because it's a Treasury level instrument,
okay,
right? It's secure because the likelihood of England or America going bust is very slim. So investors see it as a secure investment, like far more secure than other investments, including things like banks. Banks lend from each other and whatever it is. This is government level. So the Bank of China, or the Treasury in China will go, part of our strategy is to go and invest. Now, the point that you made earlier on around gold was a really important point, because historically banks and governments traded in gold. They'd have to have gold bullion to and be able to repay their debt in gold if they were unable to do so. That was the mechanism. So it was always a physical commodity. The bonds came about. So the challenge here is 20-odd% of America's debt is owned by China. Right? China goes, you know what? I'm going to sell all of these bonds. I've got £749 billion of bonds.
right,
I'm going to sell them all.
right.
And the value of them drops. And then America can't repay its debt. Like China could.
Who would they sell the bonds to, Ammar?
Other people. Like
What?
it's a traded commodity, Jeff. So it's not anyone can buy a bond. Like anybody can buy a bond. But it's a longer term type of investment. So the likelihood is if they start selling them, they'll lose money in them. That's why you wouldn't do it. But in a trade war, in this circumstance, if China and Japan decided to dump the UK and the US bonds that they have, you're talking about nearly 2 trillion.
If they dump it, do they not lose?
Yeah,
China,
yeah, they do.
China lose.
No, they lose some, but they tank the American economy.
Yeah. So the American loses a lot more.
Like, well, America goes pop, doesn't it? It can't repay its bonds. It doesn't have two
So
trillion pounds out
if
there.
they can't pay it, what's the concept? They're just going to say, "Well, I'm sorry, I don't have the money. I'm not going to pay you."
Right.
Sorry,
So
China.
all of them. So if okay, so let's just see. If for example, let's just go how many?
Because I've heard that the Chinese have recalled the gold that was in the US, and the Americans have said we're not going to give it to you because I don't think they've got it. So what does that mean then?
Oh, I mean, at the end of the day, look, it's the challenge here with all of what we're talking about is it's not going to be Xi Jinping or Donald Trump that suffers here, is it?
Mm,
It's us. It's people on the ground.
mm,
So everything now from China and America is costing more. Like all of our stocks and shares, these are the manufacturing, um, you know, the world's manufacturing happens in China.
mm.
Anyway, what's really exciting on the flip side of all of this, Jeff, was I was talking to China on Wednesday,
Right.
and I'm in discussions with setting up plants and Chinese companies here in the UK.
Brilliant.
Yeah, oh, it's so exciting. It's so exciting. Where there's a challenge, there's an opportunity. And given what we've been doing with the International Trade Center and all the relationships that we've got relationships at government level and at ground level, and it is so exciting because it's like I've got calls with all of the free ports next week. And the free ports in the UK are such an amazingly attractive proposition for anyone manufacturing anything in the world because it allows you to bring it in without any tax or consideration and export it and use bonded warehouses as well. Anyway, it's like everything that we've been working on for 20 years. It's almost like so. So I'm behind every cloud.
There's a silver lining.
I think so. I hope so.
Brilliant.
But let's see. Anyway, just conversations. But I mean, fundamentally, the impact of all of this is profound, and it doesn't help at all with all of the other changes that were introduced. Now, of course, you can't expect our government to have a glass
Yeah.
ball, crystal ball, even.
Yeah.
But you'd certainly expect some consideration, given the turbulence that we've experienced over the last few years with COVID, with Brexit, with wars, with cost of living, to have some agility in whatever was introduced. Now, because they've introduced laws and changed policies, it takes, it's hard to reverse them. And then they've got, sadly, the biggest issue with the human race and every single one of us is the inability to simply put your hands up and say, I made a mistake and fix it.
Mm.
It's a horrible trait that we humans have, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
We'll spend more time defending things and sort of trying to justify your decisions rather than at times, and particularly sadly, leaders in certain positions. Why can't the government just go, all right, we recognize this, what we're going to have to do is just look at our debt. We're going to have to look at, yes, we need to make savings. I mean, the public services bill is crazy. And the level of efficiencies that you can introduce, you just need to adopt some of the principles that we're forced to adopt in business. You know, why can't you do that? Why is everyone enforcing things on businesses and business people and not taking some of that themselves? You know, across all sectors, across all areas, across all divisions. So it's a real shame. It's a real shame. But you know, for me, reversing some of these abhorrent decisions
Mm.
that are going to cause so many businesses to just close,
Yep.
put more people in poverty because they're unable to secure any benefits either.
I mean, you know what the big worry is? Why is it that the so-called conspiracy theorists seem to be right about so many conspiracies?
Yeah, they're not conspiracies. They're not.
Amar, it's basically they said that well the the government want to put the businesses in trouble. They want to make life difficult for the public, and all of these kind of things that was said 1 or 2 years ago about the policies that they've taken. And I think this is just a continuation, whether it be Liz Truss or whether it be Rachel Reeves or whether it be, you know, the government under Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak or whoever it may be, Keir Starmer. It's all much of a muchness, isn't it? The direction and the plight of the economy and the reduction in people's livelihoods and lifestyles and earnings, it's just been it's been spiraling out of control for many years. And I think that's the worry. Why is it going in that direction? And what you've just said is it's not about making a mistake. It's just they've probably got a firm policy that we're just going to be hard-headed, let the people suffer, and this is what we've agreed to do. Let's see where we are. And that's one of the biggest worries. You know, we have so many people that are knocking on the door, saying that look, we're really struggling with the cost of living. Can you put our salaries up? And we're thinking, well, hold on, the salaries have just gone up, the minimum wage has gone up, the NIs have gone up. But what's happened is, whilst the salaries have gone up, the net gain, because of the threshold changes in NI and stuff, the net gain is actually very minimal in terms of what the individuals are getting. Because
That's right. But they've squeezed it both ways, Jeff. So, you know, the introduction or the reduction of national insurance from, 9,000 whatever to 5,000 for an individual.
yeah,
All of a sudden they're actually not realizing any value or benefit. So, you know, everyone who voted for whoever they voted, and we are absolutely apolitical. But I must admit, I am becoming so frustrated with, sadly, the policies that are being introduced and imposed on us, that I feel, as a business in particular, I'm unable to just simply sit on my hands. You know, it's really challenging, and it's not fair. And it's not fair on the people that we should be supporting the most. And the reason why I'm saying this is the people we should be supporting the most are employees of the team.
yeah,
But as a business owner, right? Okay, here's our position. Quite simply, people are not prepared to pay any more for the service or goods or products that they get. Right? They're not. So putting up your price is just
it's
so.
not the answer. So Amar,
Yeah.
okay, just before you move forward, if you can just on what you're just about to say, just bear in mind, let's look at any business model, and let's look at the options that you have in order to survive. So the first point there is that okay, you can't put the prices up. So let's go through it sequentially. So that's step one. You cannot do it. So your costs have risen, but you can't put the prices up. So what's the next option That's because we've done a little exercise on this. So let's see if we can do it on air for the benefit of our listeners and other businesses, owners or directors, whoever maybe that may be listening in. So point one, price increases is a no because the prices are probably at a point where you can't push them any further.
Well, I mean, the crux of the matter is, and you're absolutely right, if we were to look at and dissect some of the options. But before we do that, let's just look at some of the backdrops, so the environmental factors, where or what has happened to get us to this point. Because it's really, really important to understand that. And it almost feels like whatever decisions have been made without truly understanding the impact of them. We talk about the conspiracy of Newcastle city centre, and I'm relatively certain that there is undoubtedly a conspiracy going on there in regards to traffic management, because it's just progressively getting worse. And we've said this tongue in cheek, right? But somebody somewhere must be sat there going, Tyne Bridge issue, A1 issue, city centre pedestrianisation, looking at this. What about
charges, ABC and
what about footfall? What about congestion? What about footfall? What about retail? What about the naivety and the short-sightedness of some of the knee-jerk reactions? Let's put some more cycle lanes into places and spaces where there aren't any cycles or cyclists.
Yeah,
I love anybody cycling. Yeah, I would encourage it. Just not in front of me. Is what I did. I say that out loud? Sorry. And actually, when the kids are going out, I love it. I think it's kids should get out, adults should get out, do more cycling. But do we need more cycle lanes? Will putting in cycle lanes force people to get on a bike? No. I think the literal sense is they'll get on their bike and not go to wherever they need to be or should be. So that's an incredible challenge. But if I use that analogy, if I use that example of the short-sightedness and the disconnect is, if people aren't going into city centres and retail and buying, right, what does that do? Well, it immediately impacts things like rates, income being generated, right? It immediately impacts things like license fees and various other income generated by local authorities. And before you know it, there's such a gap between the two that local authorities are going bankrupt. Local authorities are going bankrupt. In this world, in this space, in this place, local authorities are going bankrupt. That is just crazy. Crazy, right? So coming back to the points that you're making, what are the options as a business owner, as a founder, as a person who stays awake all night thinking, I've got these people to pay. I've got these people to pay. I'm not generating any income. I've got my own mortgages. I've got to feed my own family. I've got the whole world's pressure on my shoulders, and I've got these people to pay. And I want to not just pay them, I want to pay them as well as I can. Afford it. Right? I want healthy, wealthy, happy stuff is what I want. So all of a sudden, options, because what I've been asked to do is from a regulation, so the employment law bill and all of that, forces me to introduce additional burdens on how I recruit, where I recruit, what I do. And a lot of those things, actually, a lot of the people that in hospitality or wherever it is, want a 0-hour contract. They don't want the commitment or being forced to have to work at this or that and whatever else. They appreciate the flexibility because actually they might be studying or whatever. Anyway, there's all of these regulatory changes I need to contend with. And I'm not an HR expert, so I need to go and talk to a solicitor. I need to pay for their advice, all of this burden. And then someone needs to decipher it. I need to update all my contracts and I need to do all of these things. So there's 5-10% of my profit margin gone, right? That's without the 20% that's been introduced by way of rate relief, by way of additional NIC, by way of costs generally, by way of suppliers that I'm dependent upon. So if my supplier said to me, which, last week, all my cleaners, all of my services we're putting up our prices. What do I do? I'm going to go, so I get my marigolds on, is what I do. And I'm now sleeping at night, and I'm not just like paying for my bills. I'm now on my hands and knees scrubbing the floor because I can't afford the cleaners. That's what I'm doing. So, then the next thing is, whilst every single supplier and goods have gone up, if I then say to my businesses, any of my customers, oh, by the way, I need to put my prices up, they'll go, you know what? I'm not going to come in and eat. Doesn't matter. I'll just eat at home. I'll just eat at home, right? So I'll eat at home. So putting your prices up isn't an option. What other options are there? Could I try and make things a bit more efficient? I could lay off some staff, right? The impact of that is, well, I don't want to do that because I like all my staff. And I really value them, and I've developed them, and I've invested in them, and they're part of my team. And actually, I spend more time with my staff than I do with my family. They're my family. I've chosen them to be my family. I don't want to see them go without. But if I don't have a choice, I don't have a choice, right? So all of a sudden, I'm then laying off staff. What does that do? The reverse of what the government was hoping would happen. Right? All of a sudden, these people are then claiming benefits, and actually, the way that the benefits are, there isn't any enough benefits for them. They're not eligible for half of that. There are no jobs anywhere. What does that do? Eventually, they end up homeless on the streets. They're begging for food, and that's on my conscience. So not only am I then dreaming about all of these things, I'm like, I'm being plagued. I'm traumatized by this, and then because I've had to lose staff, my service that I've built up to be the best it can is impacted. My customers are coming in and actually they're not getting the service they want. They leave and all of a sudden it's right. So it's like this maze where you keep going to a dead end, and I can go on and on and on and on. Okay, alternatively, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take out a few £100,000 debt, right? Because I can get debt. What does that happen? All right, well, I'm just going to prop up my business. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to get myself into debt. Eventually, that money runs out, and or I sell something and that money runs out, and the cost of living and all of the issues have affected me. I've just ploughed and put myself in a more precarious position, and all of a sudden, I fell off a cliff. I'm jumping off a cliff because I've got no other option. So your option one, jump off a cliff. Option two, jump off a cliff. Option three, jump off a cliff. Oh, I wonder what my options are. And sorry, that's an analogy just for the purpose of this conversation, and just to be crystal clear.
We're not asking anyone.
Please don't ever jump off a cliff.
Yeah.
There's better places to jump.
It's a metaphor, the cliff, but the time bridge is probably more realistic.
Don't be. That's ridiculous. Right? So don't say it. Anyway.
So.
I'm traumatized just by sharing it, Jeff.
I mean, okay, so going back to that then, cost increases, can't do it. Then you've got cutting down you have to maybe, as you mentioned, Ammar, you have to look at your staff members and see who and where you can cut, because you have to try and reduce the costs. So you got your labor costs. It maybe is a matter of speaking to your suppliers, seeing if you're able to curb, because the suppliers are going to be knocking on the door saying, look, I'm sorry, but the prices are going to go up, because they're facing the same situation. So they're going to look to put the prices up, but then we're going to have to look to see if we can negotiate with suppliers to get the cost down, which will probably be a massive battle, because how are you going to win that battle when their margins are also getting squeezed? So that's something that you can try and do as an operator, as a business. Look at your supply, see if you can reduce the cost. I think the other one is, and we had a discussion about this yesterday because we had an emergency meeting with all the management team, and we were saying that maybe it's finding a way to be the most efficient. And we looked at it, how do you become more efficient? And we kind of worked on it, and we said that, well, you need to have, if you do try and cut down the team, whoever is left, if you got 2 people trying to do 3 people's jobs, then those 2 people have to be super duper at their job. So you may have to invest in a bit of training and development to get your team as lean as possible, get them to be, skill them up as best that you can, that they can be more efficient because they've developed greater skills. That's kind of one of the methods that we identified that could help us. But ultimately, we went around and we looked at the cost increases, and we thought to us, we couldn't find a solution. So if there are businesses out there that do have better solutions than what we've been able to come up with, then we would be glad to hear it so that we can share that with other people. And I'm not just talking about hospitality, even in the property sector. I was speaking to somebody yesterday, a project manager, and he's developed 4 flats, apartments in Jasmine, very well-to-do area, and the cost of build to the price that they would get, it's not worth selling these properties, because they're going to make a loss because they don't have the margin. So instead, they're forced to rent just to claw some money back, and they're hoping that the market conditions are going to change in the very near future.
I'm smiling, Jaff, because alongside my international trade sector, so normally I'm the really positive one and you're the negative, and I love the role switch that we're doing this morning. I mustn't have had my shredded wheat or Weetabix. You must have. I used to love ready break though.
Yeah.
Growing up, having ready break with like sugar was it just had this lovely warm fuzzy feeling. And there are other cereals out there, and actually there's a book that everyone needs to read called Cereal Killer. It's the impact of cereal on your body. That's a different conversation. But coming back to positivity. So, Jeff, for 20 odd years and 30 as part of my career, we've been looking at innovation, right? And going back to what we're doing at our International Trade Centre is we're taking scale-up companies, but the principles apply to everyone. We're putting them together, right? So we're bringing 100 companies together, and it's great that you've signed up to be one of those companies and be part of this community as part of your strategy, because the program that has been developed over the last 20 years of developing and delivering programs is business model innovation, right? So how do you, as a business, so parking everything that I've said aside, what are the things that businesses can really do, right? So climb back up the Tyne Bridge or the cliff is the starting point, right? Because the likelihood is if you've got the courage and the conviction, where there's a will, there's a way, and get to the top and don't stand by yourself ever again, right? So the thing as business owners, one of the things that we really struggle with is just being open, sharing some of the challenges and having those conversations with other people. Everyone's suffering. It's like, it's not as if you're in isolation. So creating an environment where people come with their business models and put it on a wall and say, right, you're right, efficiency is one of them. But actually, what could you do? And the areas that you need to look at is desirability. So, who currently buys your product or service? How do they buy it? And can you extend it? Right? Is there a novel or an alternative spin out of whatever it is? So, if you are a premium burger, and your burgers are £20, do you develop and I'm using the term inferior because it's the opposite of superior, but that's not what I mean. Do you develop something else that is more cost effective, and or there's that. So the desirability and other markets, and can you go in and collaborate? What about you create a joint menu with two or three other restaurants, giving people a bit of an option, when they buy, or do you pivot to delivery and you haven't done delivery or whatever it is? Anyway, there's those two things. And you mentioned about property. Well, imagine if a property developer, a property owner, and a restaurateur came together with a tech company and sort of said, how do we develop something unique, so exciting that it's going to tackle all of the challenges, the barriers, and everything that's happening? So that desirability. Second thing is feasibility. And, can you deliver this innovative new business model that you're creating? And then the third and the most critical, I would say, is viability. So are you going to make money from it? And it is about looking at those things. Now, as a business model, Jeff, and I don't know what you've done in your emergency meeting, but if I was facilitating that as the leading authority on innovation, I'd be asking and inviting people through a discovery type session to come up with, what's driving us forward. So what are the things that we're really successful at and what's holding us back? And if it's just purely costs, well, then you start looking at, okay, if cost is our biggest challenge and, finance is the biggest issue, what could we do to address that? And you're going to get two elements to that. One is, how do you become more efficient? But actually, the other is, how do you just simply make more money, right? So immediately, and if you do that creatively in a facilitated type of environment with influences from other business owners or whatever it is, and you work on a grand challenge, each and every one of you, you're coming up with an innovative solution that's been co-created. And if your team's involved with it, it's incredible. It's so powerful. So immediately I'm thinking, your brand, it's brilliant. Why aren't you creating a merchandise section to generate income? Why wouldn't you want a Kai, hoodie or a cup or a Kai or a Dabba or whatever it is, and start selling some of those things? So create a merchandise, spin that out. The other thing is why, perfect example of things that customers may not be aware of, and I'm not suggesting you do this, but British Airways saved millions of pounds by removing 2 olives from their starter salad over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Customers didn't notice, didn't complain, wasn't an issue, saved millions of pounds. I'm just, so there's different approaches that sadly, because if you're just going, we've got a problem, how do we fix the problem? Everyone's fixated on that problem. If you go, here's an opportunity or here's a challenge, and let's put everything on the board, regardless of whatever it is, even if it's wacky, right? Let's go and open up a restaurant in Mars, because actually no one's there. We want to be the first, things like that. It just gets people creative, and you need innovation to fix it. So thank you for asking that question, because that's exactly what we're doing at AirView. That's exactly what we're doing in Teesside. So any business who wants to book the trend needs to get in touch, because we're not just doing that. Yes, AirView is for scale-ups, for big businesses, and we're creating peer networks and communities of like-minded individuals to support each other. It's a 3-month program. It's transformative. We've got some of the best people in industry, billionaire companies, right? Owners of them. We were talking to them yesterday. We want to be involved. We've got Saudi, India, Pakistan, Turkey, at government and ground level. So there's a real opportunity. And for those other businesses that don't fit there, because it's a bit of an exclusive club, we've got the SME Centre of Excellence and the same principles where you can come along, you can access some support and get your business model innovated. So there's a great opportunity around it.
Amazing. Look, I think in this period, it's exactly what is going to help so much in order to get through these difficult moments. I think those that those that do their payroll monthly, you probably haven't figured out exactly what's what. But if you're able to get projected payrolls for the end of the month in advance, I think that would help you a lot, because you'll be able.
Great idea, great suggestion.
And you got like 2-3 weeks to be able to be ahead, as opposed to get that shock, because we have weekly payrolls and we tried to do a forecast last week. And we did the real thing this week. The shock was a little bit less because we anticipated it. And we've been a week ahead in terms of our contingency plans. And everyone must have a contingency plan, because I would say you would look at this period economically as though you're in a pandemic, and have that mentality where you have to come. I mean, the key thing that we identified, we said that, look, above all, the economics of this, no matter what we do, we couldn't make it work. But what we did say to our team members, let's get the mentality of a warrior spirit in place from today as a group of people. And I think that's going to get us through anything. And we also said that, look, no matter what happens, let's make sure that we're the last man standing at the end of wherever we get to, because the future is so bleak. We don't know where we're going to get to. But if you're built with, and people in the Northeast, we kind of got a lot of resilience in our approach to life and business. And I think we need to be at the heightened part of that for the next few weeks and months ahead, because it is going to be a rocky ride. But I think it's nice as well, Ammar, and we enjoy challenges, and we want to have challenges ahead, and we have to take our teams through these challenges.
You do, but equally, I think this is a great opportunity for people to reflect, refine, define, and deliver something sustainable. So the fourth element that I talked about was, so the first three were desirability, feasibility, viability. And the most critical part of any business model in this era is adaptability. How are you able to be agile and change to market influences and challenges and opportunities? How do you react to opportunities? Because actually, I see this as a huge opportunity. So I'm super excited to have you and your businesses signed up to AirView alongside so many others, and be part of this special exclusive community. And for everyone else, don't worry, there's support out there through the SME Centre of Excellence. And equally, ABC is lobbying, rest assured, on behalf of all of the Asian businesses, and highlighting the challenges, the amplified challenges that exist within particular communities as well. You've been listening to Ammar and
Jalf.
Didn't get the chance to go through the presentation. Just very briefly, as of Q4, there was $11.2 trillion of bonds in the US, and so a quarter of that is owned by Japan and China, right? So people just need to think about that.
Yep.
Anyway, we'll be back next week for our Good Friday special, is what we will be. We might even go up the West End and do it and see how we're going to do it, but we'll see.
It's Red Hot Radio, SpiceFM.